Hello, good morning. It's Episcopo Squirrel here, also known as Alchemage. This morning, I'm here to bring you some phenomenal news. There has been an incredible breakthrough in cannabis prohibition in the United States. As of yesterday, the House Committee voted to pass new legislation which would effectively remove the scheduling of cannabis at the federal level. This legislation is so important because not only does it remove the criminalization of cannabis by descheduling it federally, but it also will impose a 5% tax, which will be, the funds will be funneled into communities which have been most affected by cannabis prohibition. There have been entire communities that have been destroyed because of police enforcement of this law. Not only this, but it is also going to take all of the people who are currently incarcerated and have past histories with incarceration or with the law in general, as far as cannabis goes, and is going to relook at all of these cases and do resentencing. So, people with minor cannabis charges, their records will be completely expunged. As far as people with more severe cases, I'm not really too sure how that's going to go, but everyone is going to be looked at again to have their case re-examined. So this is huge because originally what was being pushed was the States Act. The States Act basically kept the federal scheduling of cannabis, but allowed each of the individual states to be able to determine whether or not they wanted to actually enforce this law. To me, this is a little bit strange because the way that our federal and state governments are set up is that the federal is supposed to create this overarching set of laws, and that the states can add to, but they can't take from. That said, we wouldn't really be able to take from and be like, no, we don't want to criminalize under the current structure. So to me, it's a little bit strange. It's honestly the only way that I really saw cannabis being legalized here in the United States was individually in each state. But this new legislation called the MORE Act, M-O-R-E, I don't remember what states or more actually means. I'm currently learning a lot of acronyms for anatomy and physiology, so I don't really have space to learn legislation acronyms. But that said, the MORE Act is completely different because it's actually removing that federal designator of Schedule 1 cannabis, or cannabis being a Schedule 1 narcotic, which in and of itself is absolutely asinine because Schedule 1 means it's a drug with no medical viability to it. Yet cannabis has been shown time and time again to have lots of different medical uses. So to say that it's a Schedule 1 alone is completely asinine. So, what does this mean right now? Well, now that it's passed the House, it has to pass in Congress. And so, that's probably not going to happen, but there is a possibility. Earlier this year, President Trump was talking about his plan to deschedule cannabis. specifically because it's good for our economy in the United States. And sure as shit, it is. You look at states like Oregon, Washington, Colorado, where they have tax on cannabis, and look at how much it's garnered and how much of that is able to be put back into the state. It's incredible the amount of money that is generated. I think it was like $1 billion in taxes from the first year in Colorado. I can't remember how much. It was something astronomical. It was insane. Maybe it was only $1 million. I can't remember, but it was something pretty high. So it may not pass. It may pass, regardless of whether it does or not. Just the simple fact that we're talking at a federal level of descheduling cannabis and allowing it to become legalized is huge. So, at that same time, as I was saying before, states can add to, but they can't take from. And so, I believe that, each individual state will still have that opportunity to determine whether or not they want to allow cannabis to be legalized in their state. And this is because, like I said, they can add to, but they can't take from. Thus, this is why we have dry states, or not states, but dry counties, where alcohol is illegal. Same thing can happen across the nation. Here in Oregon even, where cannabis is recreationally legalized, there are still counties here in Oregon where cannabis is illegal. So, or maybe it's just the sale of cannabis. I'm not certain. I can't remember the whole length of it, but regardless, maybe it's just the sale of alcohol. So, there could be that. But regardless, it's absolutely massive news. So, this is incredible because this one small thing, cannabis, the legality, state of legality of cannabis, is tied into so many different things. It's tied into the workforce because, how do we continue drug testing? Are we allowed to continue drug testing? What about for certain positions like pilots? Are they allowed to now smoke cannabis once it becomes federally legalized? Obviously, it's just like alcohol. You won't be able to be drunk or high at work, but there's a lot of people who are concerned with how cannabis can affect you in the long term. Personally, I think a pilot should be able to smoke cannabis as long as he is not flying, but that's just me. So not only is it tied into the workforce, but it's tied into the economy, state, local, and federal economy. There are so many different ways that this really ties in. Just two simple ways, with taxes and with the black market. The black market is affecting the legal market, and as you make something illegal, you increase that black market, the viability of that black market. So by legalizing, you are effectively minimizing that black market. It's still going to exist, but not nearly as greatly as it was before, especially when you provide easy access to these compounds. So it's just like alcohol. You look at alcohol. There's still a black market for alcohol. There's still moonshiners, but not nearly as much as there were during the prohibition period. So, not only does it tie into the workforce, into the economy, but it ties into law enforcement and racial disparities. This is why this new MORE Act is looking at taking the tax revenue and funneling it into rehabilitating the individual communities which have been most affected by prohibition. So, there's, more that it really ties into a lot of different things. So this one thing is a really huge snowball to start rolling down this hill. It's already big. And so it can only build more traction. It can only build more size to it. There's so much that goes with this. It's about to take down so many dominoes with it. It's amazing. It's incredible. We are standing on the precipice of an incredibly new, beautiful future for many people. Obviously, there are still a lot of people being affected by this. And so, across the world is what we need. End prohibition across the world. But it really starts here in the United States, where a lot of people are looking at us for what we are doing. And, not that we are the ones that are right. In fact, a lot of times we do a lot of fucked up wrong shit. For instance, criminalizing cannabis. Slavery. There's a good one. We definitely fucked that up. But, so yeah, I understand that there are still people being affected by the criminality of cannabis, but this one thing is going to make a lot of different changes, and hopefully we see it cascade across the entire world and not just here in the United States. So, thank you for joining me. Please let me know your opinion down below. Are you for the legalization of cannabis? Are you against the legalization of cannabis? Let me know. Give me your argument. Let's talk. Let's have this discussion. Thank you very much for joining me today. Take care.